Hey guys, Monty here, retired lawyer, active father, and today we're going to be talking about reducing the crying to a minimum with your newborn baby. Doesn't that sound good? There are ways to reduce the crying to a minimum, and in fact you should, because if your baby is crying less, then odds are strong in my view that your baby is happier. Because as I've said elsewhere, including the video that talks about the fourth trimester as a whole, babies don't cry for no reason. You know, there's always something that's bothering them, and we got to figure out what it is. And it can be sometimes difficult, and it's always nerve-wracking. And hearing your newborn baby cry, I don't care who you are. I mean, if you're watching these videos, then you're a motivated dad to be, and you're going to be the type of person for whom it's going to be stressful and even emotionally painful to hear your baby cry. So I will tell you everything I know, and hopefully it helps you reduce your baby's crying to a minimum. The good news is that you already know the two most important things, because they are food and sleep. Full feedings and good naps. And if you have those two things in place, you're already light years ahead in the game, and you're already well on your way towards having a happy and healthy baby, and you're gonna see less crying as a whole. And it's gonna help immensely with the troubleshooting, because at the end of the day, there are only so many reasons why a newborn baby cries. And let us just count them. They will cry because they are hungry, because they're gassy, because they need a diaper change, or because they are tired and sleepy. And then there's everything else, would be the fifth thing under the sun. Are they hot? Are they cold? Are they hurt? Are they sick? Is it too loud in their environment? Is it too quiet? I say newborn babies because later on, you know, after the fourth trimester, your baby may cry for other reasons, such as they don't want you to go, or they would rather play than take a nap. But not yet. I would say especially in the first month, for a lot of the fourth trimester anyway, they're really just yearning for their basic needs to be met, and you know, the waves of sleep are so powerful that you're not going to get a whole lot of resistance if you take the right steps to put them down when you need to. You know, it's something that kind of rolls out and unfurls over time, where they have more wake time and more consciousness. But in the beginning especially, I mean, those are the reasons, and it's not going to really be anything else. So consider again that if you follow a feed, wake, sleep schedule like we've been talking about in these videos, and what's been advised in books like Baby Wise that I've talked about, if you follow a feed, wake, sleep schedule, then you will already eliminate the two most important things as sources of your baby's crying. Because when your baby wakes up, he or she may be crying. Sometimes you might be able to wake them up by catching a hunger cue, and you, right as they're coming out of sleep, essentially, you put them to the breast, because, you know, you're looking at the clock, you're looking at their hunger cues, you know the time is right, and you're able to put them on the breast without their crying. But, you know, it's very common for them, you know, for you to know that it's feed time, or wake time and feed time, when you hear the crying. So you put them on the breast, they have a full feeding, you burp them during the feeding, you change their diaper either during the feeding and then get back to the feeding and finish it, or after the feeding. You know, it doesn't mean sometimes they don't do it during a nap, in which case you got to change it and try to put them down so that they can finish their sleeping. But that's it, you know, and then it's tired and sleepy. You know, in the beginning, as we've discussed, the wake times are minimal to negligible, and then after the first month, it begins to expand as a separate and distinct phase where they're ever more alert and more conscious. But you got to keep that period brief in the beginning, as we discussed, so you can put them back down for naps. So, you know, there's the first key to the troubleshooting is to give them good full feedings and allow them to have good quality naps, and try to follow a feed wake sleep schedule would be our recommendation, because then you've already knocked out hunger and sleep. And the other ones really aren't so hard. I'm not going to be teaching anybody how to change a diaper in these videos, forgive me, but I think there's resources online and offline where you can learn about that. And it's not, certainly not rocket science. It's not that big of a deal once you just see someone do it, or you go through the motions, and you'll be able to get the hang of it in pretty short order if you just spend I don't know, a little bit of time looking at it. And the burping, I mean, I gave a tip in one of my other videos. I would just say quickly that rather than smacking a baby on the back like you see essentially everybody doing in the world, I don't know what's customary elsewhere in the world, but I mean, it's just almost a universal practice to like pat, 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 pat on the back when you got them on your shoulder, or if you're holding them, you just smack them on the back. But like I said, try parking him on your lap. Suppose he's facing this way. His stomach is right here on the left side of his body, left of the small of his back, maybe a little higher than that. But you just rub nice little circles, give him a nice massage, and basically where the stomach, or near where the stomach is located, and the baby will burp every time. But those aren't issues. I mean, those are sources of crying. But if you got the feed wake sleep cycle in place, and you're troubleshooting for the hunger, and you're very mindful, or as diligent as you can be, about the sleep, the burping and the gassiness and the diaper changes are not going to be a problem for you. That there's just not going to be anything that's going to cause problems. In short order, you're going to know how to burp a baby and change a baby's diaper, and they're going to stop crying as soon as they burped, and as soon as they have a fresh diaper on their bottom, they're going to stop crying. They stop crying when the need is met. Hunger can be more difficult, and sleep can certainly be more difficult, especially if we're not paying attention to them. And those are the two fundamental issues. The second thing I want to tell you, beyond just, troubleshooting, starts with understanding, the primary sources of your baby's cries, and then even kind of organizing your life and adopting a lifestyle that's conducive to meeting those basic needs, so that they're not crying for those reasons, at least, those basic reasons. The next thing I want to tell you about how you meet those basic needs is how to know the cues, to know the hunger cues, the gassy cues, and the tired / fatigued / sleepy cues. There's also cues for things like babies just, let's say they have more wake time and they're playing, or an adult is trying to entertain them, and they just need a change of scenery, change of pace. They want a different activity. They want to look elsewhere. There's cues for that are more or less obvious. There's cues about whether they're hot or cold, but I think those are going to be relatively more obvious to most people. They know the circumstances they're in. If you're in the middle of a blizzard or a snowstorm, please make sure the baby's not cold, right? Make sure he's warm. And if you're in the middle of the desert in the dead of summer, my God, get inside of some air conditioning, right? But hunger cues, burpy, gassy cues, and tired / sleepy / fatigue cues, I think I have some useful things to tell you guys. So let's start with the hunger cues. 4 things, if you ask me. First is what everyone will refer to as a classic rooting gesture or rooting activity. Rooting meaning the newborn is rooting around with its head and mouth, looking for food, essentially just stretching and yearning for food, looking for the breast, looking to nurse. The tongue may be curled to the side, according to some folks. I don't know if I necessarily saw that in my son, but that's possible. But they may crane their neck, they may arch their back, turn the head from side to side, and they're rooting. They're just looking for the breast, looking for the bottle, looking for food. The next cue for hunger could be hands or fist to mouth, but not to suck. Because sucking is a primary self-soothing reflex, or tool in the newborn's toolbox for how to self-soothe. So you don't want to mistake it for that, but if you know your baby, you have some eye on the clock, you understand when the last feeding was, you're trying to follow some basic schedule to keep things organized in your house. That shouldn't be a problem. If they're putting their hands to the mouth, putting their fist in their mouth, it may mean that they're hungry. Here's an interesting one. You may hear and these, I think the next two are more subtle hunger cues, but they were very valuable for us because, in the first month when we were just hovering over this bassinet, talk about, helicopter parents. I mean, we're just like obsessed with this newborn. Is he breathing? How long has he been sleeping or whatever? Like I said earlier in this video, you often can catch the baby coming out of a nap. It's been an hour and a half. We expect him to wake up soon anyway. And sure enough, you might hear what some experts refer to as a slight cough-like sound in the back of the throat. And believe it or not, we perceive that and experience that with our son. Cough-like sound, or even just a slight small cough from the back of the throat. May not be the case for you, but I thought that was an interesting, very subtle hunger cue that suggested that even as this baby is still asleep and maybe working off the last few seconds or minutes of sleep that he needs, he's emerging from that sleep and he's hungry. And it's, the main reason why he's going to be waking up to begin with. And they wake up with appetites that are fierce, right? So, you start to hear a cough, a small little cough. You might be able to, get yourself ready and maybe catch the wave where you bring this baby to the breast right as he's coming out of his nap. Won't even hear crying. Baby will start feeding, especially once the breastfeeding is really taken and mom and baby are both comfortable. You get a good latch. Baby is just nursing away. And then all you got to think about for crying after that is the gassiness, burping, dirty diapers, and then eventually, or soon enough, fairly soon in the fourth trimester, thinking about nap time. But look for that, and I wonder if that you'll hear something like that too, a small cough-like sound in the back of the throat. The fourth hunger cue that I want to share with you guys, and the second one that is rather subtle and is a leading, like that cough, it's a leading indicator. It's something that you can catch, like I keep saying, you can catch it before you hear the crying. Which again, with a feed-wake-sleep cycle, that's going to be very difficult to do because the crying will pretty quickly follow in close order from the nap, because they'll just wake up and they're hungry. You know what I mean? But the fourth cue is smacking or licking the lips. We got that a lot. Our son you would hear smacking of the lips. He's like asleep, half asleep, but just smacking his lips because he's hungry, even as he's waking up from his sleep. And that's a less subtle than the cough, but it's still a subtle hunger cue that's a leading indicator. Get yourself ready. I mean, I would even dare say you could probably pick up the baby right then and there and maybe wake him up and put him to the breast, and it'll be feed time. But maybe not. Obviously it depends on the clock and how much time he's had to nap, and if you really do need to wake him up, or just let it ride. If you're there anyway, hovering above the bassinet, waiting to put him to the breast and start the feeding. If you're on top of it anyway, then you can wait. But it's a leading indicator, and I think it's more common than the cough, perhaps. But look for that smacking the lips. Even as he's sleeping, if it's been about an hour and a half, hour 45, 2 hours more, he's probably waking up and he's probably hungry. Gassiness cues. Here I have three for you to consider. The first is that the newborn baby will have the tongue curled upward, almost like a little lizard, but again, without sucking, because sometimes sucking on their own tongue in a way, curling their tongue and sucking on it, that's a self-soothing thing that they might do. It doesn't necessarily mean he's gassy. But I don't recall whether that was the case with our son. But most of these troubleshooting cues are taken from Tracy Hogg's book, The Secrets of a Baby Whisperer, that I've talked about throughout this series, including the first video where I talked about all the books that we'd read in some detail. So I'll give her credit for that. This one, I don't remember whether we saw it in our son, but that's something you might look for. Obviously, the most helpful clue to gassiness that I can give you is the obvious one, which is it will occur while he or she is nursing or feeding, because that's when they're sucking in the air bubbles, which causes the gassiness or the need to burp in the first place. So that's the big obvious sign that it could be gassiness and the baby might need a burp. But beyond that, look for the tongue curled upward like a little lizard. Look for a grimacing and a scrunched up face. That could be a good sign, especially if you're nursing, right? Maybe a scrunched up body too. I think Ms. Hogg says that the bodies can go rigid, and we might have seen that, but I don't remember. But as far as body language, otherwise, look for squirming. Imagine you kind of have this gas, or shoot, maybe you need to fart or something. We squirm. That's what we do, right? So the baby's going to squirm. The legs and the knees might be pulled up to the chest, and I don't know, sometimes that might help them, pass gas that way, or, it just might signal to you that they need a burp. So look for those types of cues when it comes to gassiness and burping the baby. As far as tired or sleepy cues that a nap is looming and imminent, and you would be well served to wrap up whatever you're doing and get to your pre-nap routine so that this baby will go down without any fussing or crying and sleep like a baby. First cue is what I would call slow down. Dr. Weissbluth, and I'm sure other people refer to this, but I don't think anybody actually, kind of like categorizes it or identifies it as a cue, but it is. I think the first, maybe most subtle sleep cue that you can look for in your newborn baby, maybe not the first month because they're just constantly passing out, but as wake time begins to emerge, and it's a very minimal wake time of something like 45 minutes to an hour and a half perhaps in the second month, measured from the start of the breastfeeding, by the way, measured from the time they got up from the nap. Perhaps the most subtle cue, or the first cue that you'll see, is that there's a sudden slowdown in their activity. And they might get kind of a glassy, vacant look in their eyes. Whatever they were doing, they just kind of stop suddenly. And you can see there's just this wave of like fatigue hitting them. We got to understand that for a newborn baby, everything is kind of condensed. So a period of time, like for example, if I woke up at 6 a.m. this morning, and I'm, by midnight tonight, by 2 a.m., by 3 a.m., by 4 a.m., I don't know about you, but I would be ready for bed, and I would be pretty darn sleepy and maybe getting cranky and grumpy. Now imagine if I pulled an all-nighter, and how grumpy or cranky I might be the next day, or by mid-afternoon the following day, and I still hadn't slept. Everything is condensed for a newborn. So asking them to stay awake longer than seconds sometimes, but certainly minutes in these very early days would be like asking you to stay up for another number of hours. And if you can understand that, then you'll be more on top, and you'll get more out in front of these sleep cycles and help your baby achieve better naps. So look for slowdown, look for glassy, vacant looks in the eyes, what my wife and I will call a 1,000-mile stare, where they're just kind of looking past you, and they're just like, slowing down. You can tell. If you're observing and you're paying attention, spend enough time with your baby, you'll see those things. In order, kind of an ascending order of, early subtle leading indicators to more lagging indicators, turning the head away or side to side. You know, if it's not nap time, it could just mean the baby wants to do something else. But if it's close to nap time, it might indicate fatigue and the need for the onset of sleep. Tugging the ears or the cheeks. We didn't necessarily see the cheeks, but I think we did see the ears, and that's not, that's not intuitive to me. I wouldn't have thought, why would that mean that the baby was ready for a nap? But consider it. Perhaps look for it in your baby and look at the clock and see if it makes sense, because that could be an indicator that some kind of a cue that he or she is giving off that he's getting sleepy and needs to nap. Rubbing the eyes, pretty good sign. I mentioned in the last video about sleep. Red eyes or bloodshot eyes, I would say, geez, I put this baby down. I'm not sure if we saw that in our son, but, that's a relatively clear sign, if you ask me. Yawns, I talked about yawns in the last video on the 4th trimester and sleeping through the night, but in our experience, yawns were not a leading or lagging indicator. They were somewhere in the middle. And by the time we saw our first yawn, it was almost always, I would say, after the glassy eyes, after the slowdown, maybe after the 1,000-mile stare, but around there, you might get the first yawn. And as I said in the last video, that is a yellow light. It's not a leading indicator. It's somewhere in the middle. It says, you know what, you could probably put this baby down right now. But whatever you're doing, try to, make haste and, wrap it up and, prepare for your pre-nap routine and prepare for nap time. The second yawn was really kind of a red light. It's like, stop. And, it would be good if this baby went down right now if you don't want to hear any fussing or crying. And in our experience, if we waited for the third yawn, we would start to get fussing fussiness and crying. And then you have to deploy other methods to try to soothe the baby, calm him down a little bit so that he can nap at that point. And the longer you wait and the louder and more desperate the crying gets, the more overtired and overstimulated this newborn baby gets, or even not so newborn baby, you're asking for it. Now it's like maybe they got to fall asleep in your arms. You can't put them down drowsy but awake unless you're willing to walk away and just let them, cry it out, which, by the way, is perfectly fine. I think we ought to kind of somewhat end the debate about whether, letting a baby cry to sleep, if that's all it is and everything else is totally hunky-dory, and, maybe we made the mistake of delaying the nap and now they're paying the price for it. Frankly, I think the best thing to do is just let them cry until they fall asleep, because that's really what they need. If, be my guest, and, by and large, I think in those cases, we actually had to, we soothed him to sleep. We didn't let our son cry it out. Not in the 4th trimester anyway. We certainly did in the month that followed, and I'll talk about that in future videos, but we didn't do it in the first 3 months, but we did have to soothe him and calm him down so that he would either fall asleep and then put him down, or just calm him down enough to soothe him down enough that he was calm and then put him down drowsy but awake if we could. So, look at yawns as that kind of a tool or that kind of an indicator to guide you. The next cue would be fussiness, arching of the back, maybe strong, uncoordinated kicking. You're getting very close to this baby starting to cry, and, think about it. He's obviously expressing something, that he's not happy, and he's not happy because, he needs to sleep, and maybe he's in an environment that, stimulating or whatever, or he's just not on his back and he's not in mommy's arms, or he's not in a scenario in which he can sleep, or, maybe he's fighting the need to sleep. In any event, if you talk to, I'll say it again, if you talk to one of us after pulling an all-nighter, or God forbid going, starting to go a second night without sleep, things get kooky, right? I mean, it's things start to unravel pretty quickly with sleep deprivation. And again, asking a newborn baby to stay up another, 15 minutes even, beyond the time that they really, really need to be sleeping. They might pass out from exhaustion eventually, but you're going to hear a lot of crying along the way before then. So look for those sleep cues and govern yourselves accordingly. These are things you can do to really cut down on the amount of crying you'll hear and see from your baby, which means that he's a happier baby. Crying, it means that he's unhappy about something. So, it's sometimes I think we have it backwards where baby needs to go down and get sleep, but we won't let him cry it out. And we're actually taking steps and, taking actions that interfere with their ability to get good sleep. But then, we just think that, oh, it's fine. Babies cry all the time, and he'll just sleep in the middle of this loud bright room with it might be loud, but it's also just inconsistently loud. It's not rhythmic, kind of soothing, melodic loudness like they might experience in the womb, but it's different decibel levels and clattering sounds and all this kind of stuff, or even bright lights. And we think, well, they can just sleep through it. Well, they can, but it's not going to be the most restful or restorative sleep. I mean, a baby will eventually, pass out from exhaustion anyway. But it's important that they get good sleep. So look for those sleep cues, and remember that timing is everything. If you look for those cues and you get the timing right, your baby will go down a lot of times with no fussing or crying at all. If you are mindful of all of these things and your baby is still crying, then I will refer you once again to Dr. Harvey Karp's 5 S's. I talked about it in my video about the 4th trimester generally, and I will talk to you guys about it now because it's spectacular and brilliant. And look up Dr. Karp's website, happiestbaby.com. Google 5 S's, Dr. Harvey Karp, and you'll get videos where people are demonstrating how to do the 5 S's. That idea behind the 5 S's is that human babies are born about 3 months too early, which is why we call the first 3 months the 4th trimester. And why is that? It's because our brains and our skulls are getting too big to fit through the birth canal. So we come into the world, all of us, premature, as it were. And we need this adjustment period where, the baby is wondering where the hell it is, what the hell is going on, and why, why whatever level of consciousness it had in the womb, why the conditions in the womb have disappeared, and why he's thrust into this new world that is unfamiliar and unlike the world from which he emerged. So the 5 S's are all about mimicking or recreating the conditions of the womb, and you will be shocked how effective they are at soothing your baby when everything else fails, when it's not hunger, when it's not gassiness, when it's not a dirty diaper, when it's not a good nap, when it's not too hot, too cold, hurt or sick. He's not hurt, he's not sick. You've checked for little bits of mom's hair wrapped around its toe, and that's causing it some pain or discomfort. It could be the craziest things, but if you've ruled out everything else, it might just be this existential angst in a way where the baby is dealing with the 4th trimester, wondering what the heck is going on and needs to be soothed. So the 5 ways to soothe a baby, the 5 ways to mimic or recreate the conditions of the womb are to swaddle the baby. Look it up and learn to swaddle, or just buy what we did, which are a bunch of sleep sacks that when it's time to put your baby down for a nap, you put it in the sleep sack. There's this Velcro thing that, binds the arms down or something. It's kind of like a sleep sack basically to sleep in, but it swaddles your baby for you. Or just learn how to swaddle the baby, because when you have the arms down like this, first of all, there's this reflex where the baby can sometimes wake itself up or startle itself by smacking itself in the head with these limbs that are flailing around. So it helps with that, but it also kind of mimics the cozy, tight-knit conditions, space in the womb where it's just used to living that way. So it reminds it of the place that it came from. The next S is to swing or sway the baby. And that's because, baby was used to bobbing and swaying in mom's belly when she went about her business throughout the day. Dr. Karp will tell you that it's interesting. The most effective thing is not even a swaying, but like swinging, but like very quick and short movements where you're really not even moving the newborn more than an inch. either way, and kind of tiny little quick movements. And that seemed to work for us too. I'm not sure exactly why that is, because mom isn't necessarily doing that unless she's like, I don't know, working her core or something, doing side twists or whatever. But that does seem to be effective. But, swinging could also be effective. Swaying is also effective. Movement can often be effective. Just holding them and walking around the house doing this, that could be effective. Swinging and swaying motions help because, again, that's what they were used to growing up in the womb. The next S is a sideways or stomach position, because that's how babies come into the world. They come out head first, and conventional pregnancies, the baby is head down in the womb, kind of in a downward position, maybe on its stomach. Obviously it doesn't know how it's oriented spatially, but it's kind of used to that posture or positioning. So you would be surprised with your newborn baby. Even having it over your shoulder is a form of having it on its stomach. But having it on its stomach, even in your arms like this, face down, or on its side, but kind of on its stomach, and then even kind of tilted downward a little bit. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. Simulating the positioning that it had in the womb. That's the next S, and it's effective. Sucking is the fourth S. It could, everybody knows that. I mean, it's very soothing to a baby to do that, to suckle on mom's breast, to suck its thumb, to suck a pacifier, to suck your clean thumb, to suck on a lot of things. And that's helpful. I would try to avoid introducing pacifiers early on, though, for reasons I discussed in the breastfeeding videos, because it may interfere in the very early going with mom and baby getting used to a good system of breastfeeding and getting a proper latch. It may cause nipple confusion. I think there's some debate among experts about this. Talk to them and talk to your doctor and decide for yourself. I just think, I said before, wait maybe 6 weeks, and I think that's maybe the advice that's at least some experts give. I don't know if it's AAP or not. But if not 6 weeks, because I think Dr. Karp is, I was looking at his website, I think for the first time this morning. He talks about sucking being one of the S's, and he says, he didn't say to avoid it. It may or may not be a problem. My personal advice, and if I were having another baby, and the next time we do this, I would not introduce pacifiers for at least the first days or weeks. Let's get the baby used to latching onto mom's breast and nursing, and then we can introduce the passy later. But that's just us. I mean, I would give him my clean thumb to suck on. My son did that all the time. It was very soothing for him. Or he's obviously going to be suckling when he's nursing. But that's the next S. And then the fifth S is shushing. That's because the womb is actually a fairly loud place. So, having your baby like this, on its side, swaddled, and then bringing him up and fairly loudly in the ear. Not so loud to blow out an eardrum, but louder than you might think. It's not a soft shushing. It's just a moderate, loud enough shushing. And that's because the womb was actually a very loud place. Dr. Karp's website said that it was louder than a vacuum cleaner running 24/7. But here's the difference, and I think Dr. Karp would agree with me. These are relatively constant, rhythmic, even melodic kind of noises. So that's why white noise machines work well. In the early going with our son, we even had a dust buster that we just would turn on, and then we got this white noise machine, and we've been using ocean sound since our son was a baby. But it's just like a constant, it's the same sound. And it's true. The existence of sound does not appear to interfere with their sleep. In fact, it may even help. And even as an adult, I can tell you, when I have that sound machine in our bedroom, I sleep better. It blocks out other weird clattering, sudden jarring noises. Because I don't think it's the existence of sound. I think it's these punctures or these punctuating sounds or differentials in sound, where if it's quiet and then it's the silence is punctuated with some kind of a loud sound. Somebody drops something or somebody laughs loudly. I think it's why, I remember as a kid too, I could sometimes fall asleep, if there was a dinner party and they put us, I was a young kid and they would put us in a bedroom, turn off the lights, and you can kind of hear a low hum of adult conversation in the background. And that didn't seem to bother you, but I would just submit that that's different than being in a loud, daytime or just a loud, raucous, boisterous party going on with loud ass music. And, it's not just rhythmic, it's, music. So it changes in tone and tenor, and it fluctuates. And then someone, like I said, people are screaming and laughing, and then some, just sounds that are clashing and jarring. I don't think that's conducive to anybody's sleep, including newborns and babies. And I can't imagine that Dr. Karp or any pediatrician would tell you that it's actually okay for them to sleep in that environment. But shushing to soothe the baby, reminded somewhat of the sounds that it heard in the womb, and using a white noise machine of sort. I think those are good things, and they can be very effective. Now, looking at Dr. Karp's website earlier, apparently he was not so keen on ocean sounds because they weren't as similar as other sounds to the sounds of the baby heard in the womb, and that's fair enough. I mean, it worked well enough for us, and it still does. But maybe there's stuff out there that works better. Look at sound machines and read up on I don't know. I would just say pick a sound and then just kind of stick with it. Whether it's just true white noise, just static white noise, or it's ocean sounds. I wouldn't change it. Just kind of use the same sounds every time it's time for a nap. So those are the 5 S's. And you know what? I'm not going to say anything more. I've said enough. Look for the videos online. Look at Harvey Karp's website. Google Harvey Karp and the 5 S's. Look at those videos yourself. You'll see people demonstrating how to do them. But they're miracle workers. I mean, it's a miracle worker, the 5 S's. And I think it really hits the nail on the head as far as what else could be bothering your baby. If everything else seems to be okay and you're still getting fussiness or crying, I really think that's it. They're just out of the womb and they're wondering what the hell's going on. And then if you can kind of remind them in these soothing ways that they're not far from where they were, and obviously, they're being held and caressed and loved on by mommy or daddy at the time, they'll just calm right down, and they'll go down for their nap when it's time. The last thing I want to say in this video, it's kind of just a little bit of a bonus. I wish I'd mentioned it in the video that I did about the 4th trimester in general, but I want to say something about tummy time, which is simply that I think it's important. And tummy time is the idea that when a newborn is born, its neck muscles are very weak. You got to support its head and neck all the time. And anything you do, you got to support its neck and head. Because its neck muscles aren't strong enough to support that big head. But experts will tell you that at some point, I don't know, for us, I think it was after the first month that we really started making an effort to do tummy time. But they'll tell you that it's important to help the baby develop strength in its back and those neck muscles, to learn to crawl and roll over quickly. It's their first exercise, and it's the best exercise, doctors will tell you, in the first year of life. I just think it's very important for their physical development. The reason we didn't do it in the first month is because, he was just this fragile, delicate newborn. And when he wasn't napping on his back, swaddled in his bassinet, he was in our arms, he was maybe on our shoulder. So, laying down on our shoulder, even just trying to tilt his head back and look out the window, gaze out the window, or whatever he was seeing, I mean, he was using his neck muscles to do that. So just, in the course of breastfeeding, in the course of the minimal wake time that we had, where he would, we would just be holding him and loving on him and maybe passing him to each other so that each of us could love on him, he's kind of using his neck muscles that way. And then beginning in the 2nd month, right beginning in the 2nd month, we have a little bit of more wake time to begin with, and then we would put him down on his tummy for tummy time. My advice, and the advice you may come across online elsewhere, and it's good advice, is start very, very, very small, because babies don't like it so much in the beginning. And if they don't like it and they're fussing and crying, then you're not going to like it and you're not going to do it. It's not going to be very comfortable for him. He can't really lift his head up, but so do it for just seconds at a time in the beginning is what I would say. Seconds. And the second that the baby starts fussing, flip him over, like it's over. That will cure the crying or the fussing, and it may just plant a seed in his head. What was that? I was kind of seeing the world from a different angle, it was a different point of view. And you know what? I almost was able to lift my head up, and out of the corner or out of the top of my eyes, I was almost able to see what the room looked like upright. They're not going to know that it was upright necessarily. They're just going to know that they saw the world from a different perspective, and it may pique their interest. And the next time you do it, as soon as he starts fussing, turn him over. This will be seconds in the beginning, at least it was for us. But over time, you let him go until he starts fussing. The second he starts fussing, you turn him over. Those seconds will turn into maybe minutes, and then you work your way up from that and give him more and more tummy time, and you'll have a stronger, fitter, 3-month-old or 6-month-old down the line. You'll soon see him crawling up a storm, when he's ready for it. So let me know if you have any questions about this stuff, and I'll be back soon. Take care, and talk to you guys later.